Hello everyone. I find it in my heart to make this video because I am a huge track and field fan. Besides being a huge fan of basketball and sports in general, I love watching sports because I am a former athlete. Um, I ran and competed in track and field and all throughout my high school years, I was a part of the varsity team, and I ran short distance and long distances. Competed in the armory, competed in all type of events. So, sport is something that I pursued. It's something that I was passionate about. It's something that I love doing. But I have to make this video because I am looking at the time. There is a 100-meter record that is very controversial, and it's not in fact a controversy, it's a fact that the 100-meter record time set by Florence Griffith Jr., this is the lady, this is who she is, of 10.49 seconds should be removed immediately from the record books. That time is the most faulty record I have ever seen. There is evidence that proves that time was heavily winded assisted. She There's an article, right, that came out that proved that the record that she set during the quarterfinals was heavily assisted because during that whole event, when there were other athletes were competing, the wind meter was reading an excess of 2.0 meters per second. But for some odd reason, during her race, the wind meter malfunctioned and it didn't pick up any wind reading. But it was clear evidence that it was heavily wind assisted, way in the excess of 2.0 meters per second. So I'm going to read this article and go into more details about it and then give my these are facts. These are true facts. It says in a September 1998 issue of Track and Field News, the staff sport writers questioned the accuracy of the official wind reading for Florence Griffith Jr.'s 100 meters world record. Griffith Jr.'s performance of 10.49 seconds was set in quarterfinal one at the 1988 U.S. Olympic trials in Indianapolis. Of the three quarterfinal races contested, the official win readings for quarterfinals 1 and 2 were reportedly greeted with skepticism by witnesses of the race. The official win readings for the women's were 100 meters races were as follows. So look at this. In Heat 1, the wind was in excess of 2 point meters per second. It read 3.2. The E2, this was on July 16th of July. In Heat 2, it was 3.9 meters per second. Heat 3, it was 2.7 meters per second. In Heat 4, it was 3.5 meters per second. So you already seen during the heats, the wind was in excess of 2.0 meters, well in excess of 2 meters per second. It was not even close. And for some odd reason, in quarterfinal 1 and quarterfinal 2, it read 0.0 meters per second. Well, we know there's no way that wind was accurate. And in the quarterfinal 3, it was 5.0 meters per second. So you can bet that it was between well in excess of 2.0. It was probably like 3 to 5 meters per second during that quarterfinal when she ran the world record. And it was so heavily contested because the wind was obviously blowing hard. And yet, instead of them removing the record and that's not a legit time, they still have the record up as legit on the history in the history of the sport. It's faulty. It's wrong. It's like stealing from someone who actually worked hard to actually earn the time that they're supposed to earn. And the real record holder of the 100-meter record is Elaine Thompson Hera. Her time of 10.52 is the legit time. That's the real world record. It should not be Florence Griffith Jr. That record is not legit. It's false. It's wrong. It's not accurate. So the report shows that the official win readings for quarterfinal 1 and 2 are inaccurate. The win readings for these races should have been between 5.0 to 7.0 meters per second for quarterfinal 1 and between 3.0 and 4.0 for quarterfinal 2. That is Florence Griffith Jr. 100-meter record of 10.49 seconds that she set in quarterfinal 1 was assisted by a wind that was well in the excess of the legal limit of 2.0 meters per second. So you need to tell me, when she ran that world record of 10.49 seconds, the wind readings was not, it was like 5.0 to 7 meters per second. It was not even close. It was way in the excess. Like this team, this time is not legit. She didn't run that time with no wind assistance, and I can't believe the IAF, the International of, how do you, I don't know what's the acronym. I don't know what it stands for, but that's besides the point. I can't believe that they still have that time up as legit. I am so disappointed and shocked and sick. I'm sickened by the fact that these people still have Florence Griffith Jr.'s time as legit, and that is a real world record. That time is not legit. The 10.49 seconds that Florence Griffith Jr. Ran is not an accurate time. It was heavily wind assistance. Heavily wind assistant. That time needs to be removed from the history books. Period. Period. It's a it's thief, man. The conclusion was reached after plotting the performance of all the competitors, both men and women, as a function of the official wind reading. It shows that, except for quarterfinal 1 and 2, the official wind readings are consistent with the times recorded by the athletes. The two anomalous 0.0 wind readings were due to technical fault and were not due to inaccuracies inherent in the process of determining the amount of wind assistance using a wind gauge. The theory that a crosswind was responsible for the anomalous wind readings cannot be supported. Florence Griffith Jr. recorded a time of 10.61 seconds, wind readings of 1.2 in the final of at the 1988 U.S. Olympic trials. The wind readings for this race is not in doubt, and the performance should be official IAAF Women's 100-meter world record. So the legit time that she ran was 10.61 seconds that she ran of with the wind readings of 1.2 meters per second. So that's the real time. That's the real time she ran. But the 10.49 seconds, that time is not legit at all. That time is heavily wind assistance. That time had a wind assistance in excess, well in the excess of 2.0 meters per second. Because if you're not aware of track and field and the wind, and when it comes onto the wind, a time doesn't become legit if it exceed 2.0 meters per second. So once it exceeds that time, the time is no longer legit, and it's not gonna be put in the history book. It's just gonna be like faulty. It's a faulty time. And there's clear evidence that the time that Florence Griffith Jr. ran in the world record was a faulty record. That time was a faulty record. The 10.49 seconds is a faulty record. It was heavily wind assistance. Like I said, there was proof. There was proof that other competitors had an excess even in during the same event. There were other competitors competing in their own separate events, and the time that they had during the event that they were competing in was well in the excess time of 2.0 meters per second. I mean, in the well in excess wind of 2.0 meters per second. They had well over the legal wind limit. So how is it that daytime was reported to be well in the excess of 2.0 meters per second, but for some reason, Florence Griffin Jr. time is still in the record books, even though it's heavily wind assistance and it's faulty. It's not legit. There's no way she could possibly run 10 point. Just think about the time itself. How can she possibly run a time of 10.49 seconds without any wind whatsoever? That is just physically impossible. You tell me that she ran technically with wind of with the wind limit of 2.0 meters per second, a time of 10 point what 3, or like she did not run. She did not run that fast. They need to remove her time from the history book. It's unfair. It's cheating the other athletes that ran legit times, and it's just wrong. The real record holder should be Elaine Thompson Herrera, that ran a time of 10.52 seconds, man. That is legit. That is the legit world record time, man. That time should be put down as the real world record. The time that Florence Griffin Jr. ran of 10.49 seconds is extremely faulty. That is not a legit time. That time was heavily wind assistance. There's clear proof and there's solid evidence to show that that time was not as it was not legit. It was not accurate. That time was assisted by a wind in excess of 2.0 meters per second. And the board, the people who are head of the IAF, they need to get together, get a meeting, formulate some way to remove that time from the history books. There's no way they should have that time up as legit. That time is not legit. They robbed the real athletes that ran a legit time. And a real time is 10.61 seconds when she ran in the final with a wind assistance of 1.2 meters per second. That's her legit time. But that 10.49 seconds is it's highly faulty. It's not accurate, and that time was heavily wind assisted. So to be fair to the sport, they need to remove that time because that's considered cheating, technically speaking. If the time is not legit, why would they count it as a real world record? It doesn't make any logical sense. If there's so much, it's not even. There's a fact. It's a fact. They always say it's some controversy, like it's not something that was proven to be true. There is a fact that that time was not legit. The wind was well in the excess legal wind limit of 2.0 meters per second, and yet they still have that time up on the records book as legit. There's like 1,000 stars next. That time should be removed from the history books. Period. The time of 10.49 seconds meters recorded by Florence Griffin Jr. during the 100-meter quarterfinal should not be counted as a legit time in the history books. That time needs to be removed. It needs to be eradicated. It needs to be taken down. Period. The real world record holder is Elaine Thompson Herrera, who ran a time of 10.52 seconds with, I think she ran it with the wind assistance of um I think it's 0.3. I think it's 0.3 meters per second. Anyways, she's the real world record holder. They need to uphold that world record as legit. That's the real world record. They need to have integrity in the sport because it's not right to have Florence Griffin Jr. time as legit when there is no proof that that time was legit. They need to have integrity. They need to do what's right. They need to remove her record from the world record, and they need to put Elaine Thompson as the official world record. It's just the right thing to do. It's robbery. It's like robbing from somebody who actually work hard to gain what they to actually earn it the right way, man. It's pure robbery. They need to remove that time from the world record. Period. That time is not legit. They need to remove that world record time. Period. End of the story. It's pure robbery, man. It is pure robbery. As you can clearly see in the diagram, right? Look at this. Look at all the other race that she ran. You could clearly see that those race was heavily. They were these other races that she ran were heavily wind assisted. She had 3.2 meters per second in heat 1, 3.9 meters per second in heat 2, 2.7 meters per second in heat 3, 3.5 meters per second in heat 4. But for some odd reason, the wind meter malfunctioned. And the reason why it malfunctioned because the wind was really strong that time. That's the only reason why it didn't read anything. It had nothing to do with, oh, because like the article stated, it had nothing to do with some other shit that had nothing to do with the wind. It was because the wind was so strong, it literally it caused the meter thing to malfunction. So they need to remove it, man. They need to remove that world record from the history book. It's just the right thing to do. It's just it's just the right thing to do, man. The sport needs to have there needs to be some legitimacy to the sport, and they need to have integrity. They need to have integrity and remove that time from the history book. That is just not right. I'm like just looking at the time and the world record time, and I'm like, there's even speaking of it, even just looking at the time, there's no way she could legit. It was legit for her to run that time without no wind assistant, without no wind assistant. Come on now, IAF, you need to do what's right. Remove Florence Griffin Jr. World Record time from the history book. It's just the right thing to do. You need to uphold the integrity of the sport, and it's not right. It's robbery. Like, I can't believe they still have the time up as legit. I just can't believe that. It's unbelievable to me that they still have that time as legit. Remove that world record, man. Period. That time should not be up in the history book. Period. I rest my case. Like, comment, and subscribe. Take care. Bye.